We want to get to 4 downs, which is going to include this guy named Nico that you may have heard. We're pulling 4 from the 5 biggest concerns for the Vols entering 2023. That's on offthehooksports.com. Great piece by Caleb that you can read. But we're going to transition that into 4 downs, and that will be brought to you by our good friend Andy Mason, AndyMasonRealEstate.com. I'll tell you more. First 4 downs is now on Off the Hook Sports.
4 downs. 4 questions. 4 answers. The Dave Hooker Show.
4
downs. A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
All right, biggest concerns for the Vols entering 2023. Let's start right now with first down, but I want to remind you, this is brought to you by Andy Mason, AndyMasonRealEstate.com. Best prices and service in East Tennessee. He'll absolutely take care of your real estate needs. I'll be making a phone call to him very shortly, but let's get to 4 downs right now. What down is it, Coop?
Coop here, first down.
The change in Tennessee's offensive coordinator. Big concern, no concern. John?
No concern. He's been involved with Josh Heupel for a long time. He coached the quarterbacks, comes across in interviews as being very cerebral. So I don't think that'll be a hitch at all in Tennessee's offense.
Caleb, big concern, no concern.
Can I say minuscule concern?
Kind of splitting the baby, but yeah, go ahead.
I am. Okay, and here's why. For the longest, I was saying no concern because it's Josh Heupel's offense, and we saw Halsley last year, and Halsley's been with him for a while. However, I will say there's, to me, red flags if you were in a system for a while and you're never promoted. Halsley's been with Heupel since 2009, and he just now gets the offensive coordinator job. Like, Heupel didn't trust him when he first came to Tennessee to give him that job. That's the red flag to me.
That's a pretty fair point. I mean, I don't think we'll have this conversation, but could we have the conversation that Alex Golesh was the brains behind Tennessee's offense? I mean, it's at least possible. I don't think that's the case. The trenches will be what down, Coop?
Cooper Mays here, second down.
Thank you. The trenches as a whole, John, obviously Cooper's injury may add to that, but let's assume he's back 100% healthy at the end of next week, which is what we have been told. So in the trenches, you have Tennessee's pass rush and offensive line. Big concern, no concern, John.
No concern really on the defensive front. Maybe a little bit of a concern. You need to mount a pass rush, but I think Tennessee will be fine there. Offensive line, yeah, that's a concern. I just don't know how the tackles will play. However, Josh Heupel can scheme around offensive line play. He's done it before. He did it in his first season here. Tennessee didn't have a great offensive line, and it averaged almost 40 points a game.
There you go. Big concern, no concern, Caleb.
Big concern. John, I know you bring up he can scheme around the offensive line, and I agree, but Tennessee did have significant improvement from 2021 to 2022 on their offensive line. I talked to Dave about this last week. I thought the biggest improvement in Hendon Hooker's game was his pocket presence. And I'm like, was that Hendon Hooker, or was that just that the line got that much better in 2022? And then on the other side with the pass rush, I'm with you. I think it'll work out long term. But I mean, I would ask both of you, can you just replace a Byron Young? Can you just plug in Tyler Barron and think that's going to be the same?
That's what they're hoping to do. Whether or not you can, whether or not he's that good, I don't know. But I think that Darnell Wright and Byron Young, their impact is a little bit understated and undervalued by some people moving forward. So I'll give you that. Third down, Coop, or is that right?
Tennessee center Cooper Mays here, third down.
Yes, it is. The secondary, can we all just agree that this is still a big concern and has been since Josh Heupel walked on campus? Would everyone agree with that?
I think so. One thing that strikes me about the secondary, all those guys back there with experience, most of them with starting experience, nobody sticks out. There's just no – I mean, if I had to pick which player from this group has all SEC potential, I come up empty.
Yeah. Caleb, I tend to agree. The only
Totally
guy I kind of like is Nico Slaughter, maybe. But is that a reach? Maybe.
Totally agree with both you guys. We've talked about this, John. What's the likelihood a freshman is starting at cornerback for Tennessee this year, either Jordan Matthews or Ricky Gibson?
Well, I think it's a possibility, a definite possibility. If nobody in that secondary or a corner in particular raises their game, and Tennessee's getting torched by multiple quarterbacks, yeah, I could see a freshman starting. And I'm leery of freshmen, particularly in the secondary. Nonetheless, there's just the possibility exists. Tennessee has to get better there to go. I predicted Tennessee would go 10-2, and it needs to get a little better in secondary to do that.
Yep, I agree. And let's get to fourth down, and we'll talk a little bit of Nico.
Cooper Mays here. Second down.
All right, guys. So the
second down.
Second wrong button. Going back. It's like the Colorado game.
All SEC center Cooper Mays here. Fourth down.
Thank you. It is fourth down. All right. So we have a transition to quarterback. So let's talk about that. And then John has some thoughts, I know, on Nico and what kind of impact he might or might not have. Same for Caleb. So the transition to Joe Milton, John, how significant is that? How big of a concern? You like Joe Milton quite a bit, which surprised me when I was talking to you last night because you kept bringing up the Ole Miss game previously, but you said the way he finished out has been pretty strong. Your comments last night were very insightful.
Well, I think what really impressed me about Joe Milton was the Clemson game, not just his stats or that Tennessee won the game, but you go into the pregame theme was pretty much, well, these are fairly evenly matched teams, we thought. But if Joe Milton plays well, Tennessee should win. Even with Tennessee's attrition, I think that was going into the game. That was a consensus line of thinking. There was a tremendous amount of pressure on him. My biggest question about Joe Milton is not his passing accuracy. From everything I've been told, he's a more accurate passer now. And I thought he was more accurate last season as a backup than he was the previous season as a backup. Again, coming into games when the outcome wasn't hanging in the balance. I think he's improved in that area. He's been able to change speeds better. But the pressure of game situations in big games particularly, that is a question I had. And he answered that in a positive way against Clemson. That's just one game. It's not a whole season. But that really had an impact on how I viewed Joe Milton.
So, Caleb, big concern, no concern?
Joe Milton, I still say it's a concern because I'm not. Do I think the Clemson game should have been enough to put Tennessee ahead of Clemson in the AP and coaches polls this year? Yes. But I'm still not wanting to read too much into that. I can't read the same into bowl games the way I never really read much into bowl games. I still remember Jamarcus Russell having the game of his life against Notre Dame at the Sugar Bowl, and that alone made him a #1 draft pick, which was the worst draft pick of all time. But so
it was pretty good until he got on the scissor.
No, he was never good in the NFL.
I know he wasn't, but I just wanted to work in a scissor preference. He likes the purple.
Know some scissor. Y'all know the song 99.36 UGK?
I guarantee you, John does not know the song, and I don't either.
36 Mafia UGK Project Pat, a rap song out of Memphis and Houston, 1999. That's where that phrase came from.
I thought it was 98, but you're probably right.
That's right. Celebrate 98 with some scissor. So do you know what that is, John, by the way? Scissor.
Some kind of cough medicine.
Yeah, the kids drink the cough medicine to get the buzz.
Codeine. It's that lean.
That's a good strategy. I guess it beats fentanyl.
Fair enough. This is how different the take is on our message board. So let's get into Nico. We've got Trevor saying Nico is starting after the Florida game. Then we've got on our message board Rocky Top Tom saying Joe Milton comes in at 6'5", 240 pounds. I think Joe Milton is going to rocket his 12th year in college. Yes, he has been around college a while. All right, so leading to that, what impact will Nico have this year, John, if any whatsoever?
Well, if you look at Tennessee's recent track record, it's needed a backup quarterback to start a game or two. Joshua Dobbs was the exception. Great durability. I think it's so important that Tennessee has Nico ready to play, that he understands the offense well enough that he can execute it and play. But best case scenario is that Joe Milton starts and does well, and you have Nico as a backup, and that he can come in and perform effectively as well, and Tennessee can win a game with him. But if you go the other way and Nico becomes the starter, I think it could be tumultuous because going into the season, everything is kind of built around Joe Milton being good, and the teammates are all their comments reflect that. And he's not only the quarterback, but he's the team leader, as you would want a quarterback to be. So if he doesn't fare well and Nico has to come in and play, it forces Nico to get out of a comfort zone too soon. And I don't know if any freshmen are that comfortable. I think it's a lot to ask, no matter how talented, of a freshman quarterback to win against good teams in the SEC. So I think it will have an impact, though, because even if it's not a whole game, I mean, quarterback, you get bunged up in this league. Quarterback goes out for a series or two or a quarter. Nico needs to come in and play well. So I think he will have an impact, but it's best for Tennessee if his greatest impact doesn't come until next season.
I would agree with that. That means Joe Milton's playing well, Caleb. I think we'll know after the Florida game. I think that Tennessee is either going to adapt its offense like they did in the Clemson game, a lot more routes over the middle, which benefits Joe Milton. He's able to dart it in there. I don't think he's got great touch, and I don't think his chemistry was particularly good with Tennessee's wide receivers. It might be this year. But I think after the Florida game, we'll know. We'll know 100%. You either go out there and play well against the team that you beat last year, Caleb, and Tennessee wins, or if I'm Josh Heupel, I'm thinking in the back of my head, if you don't win that game, maybe I need to try this Nico cat out. That would be my answer to the question.
Yeah, and hearkening back to our previous segment, I'm going to bolster John's point a little bit. I think Tennessee has to beat Florida. I think Joe Milton has to beat Florida or else to maintain his credibility. John, you probably remember 2017. I know, Dave, you weren't covering Tennessee at the time. The Butch Jones downward spiral started because of that Florida loss with that Hail Mary. I think everybody was off the train at that point because there was this idea that there was no reason to lose to that Florida team. That was a bad Florida team led by a bad coach. And I think the sentiment is that this is a similar Florida team this year. So if you lose to Florida, I don't think Joe Milton gets his job back.
Yeah, I just think, and I can't imagine Florida being in great shape going into that game. Again, to me, that opener against Utah, that could really take a lot of confidence out of Florida. I just don't see it beating Utah on the road. So going into that game, I just think I don't see Florida as very formidable. And if Tennessee can't win that game in that situation, I've seen Tennessee too. I've seen Tennessee lose to bad Florida teams.
Mm-hmm.
But I haven't seen Josh Heupel lose to bad Florida teams. Why? Because his offense is always so good that against mediocre teams it will prevail. So if it falters against Florida, it likely will be because of the offense. It won't be because Graham Mertz completed 30 or 40 passes for 400 yards.
Yep. I think we've got to remember that, as John pointed out, technically Joe Milton has played a road game, but really he hasn't. And then with the Clemson game, there was an awful lot of Tennessee support. Same thing going to be in Virginia, in Nashville. And then you got Austin Peay. So this will be his first true road game with all the pressure on his shoulders. And I think that's big.